my personal experience with it, and what was my causality when I was a kid, and what forced me into this, and how society actually kind of drives young men towards it.
Yeah. You know, my experience with steroids is like baseball. You know, having played baseball growing up and watching a lot of the big names like Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, those guys. A lot of taboo around that, but of course the bodybuilding world. I loved wrestling too. So the wrestlers, there was this like, what did they actually use them? It was hard to prove, etc.
There's so much on this.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. And so I'm interested in this one.
It affects the US on a different level, and explain how this got to that point through Congress. Mm-hmm. But let's start with mine, right? So I'm in South Africa, right? I grow up like everybody here, right? Having these images and these things thrust upon you as a child, right? Now, I'm gonna name a couple of instances. Imagine as a kid, right? You watching Masters of the Universe, He-Man, right? Popular 80s series.
Yep.
How does he become jacked? He has a sword, thrusts it into the air, and magically he becomes this muscular guy that, you know, decimates everybody with his powers.
Right.
Or you have Captain America, who literally became Captain America by taking a serum, steroids. Or the Hulk, who gamma radiation, steroids. The inset of how heroes are developed.
When we say the Hulk too, right?
Right.
Yeah,
and the inset of how we're exposed to this as young men.
Yeah.
Is kind of, when you think of it, like, it's how do you think that everyone's not?
Lou Ferrigno was my favorite.
You know what I mean, right? And even before he played it, when you're reading the comic books, right, every single hero has a special ability, and the special abilities, either, you know, if he's an X-Man, it's because he's got some genetic anomaly, or there's a serum that the government created, or he's done some sort of experiment, or fell into a radioactive fucking pool. Who fucking knows? But there's always something that takes them from the ordinary into the extraordinary. Right now, think of that as a child. You're watching these things. Yeah. Your brain is going, oh my god, this is, you know, there's always this magic way to become this thing. Yeah. This super extraordinary thing. So circa 90s, I'm a kid living in South Africa, staying in a small town, right? I start training at around 16 years old, right? And I trained for a solid year, just getting in the gym. And I mean, I want people to understand the dynamics that steroids aren't it's not a solvable problem. You still got to do the work. Your diet shit, you're going to be shit on it. Your training shit, you're going to be shit on it, right? So you have to look at it from that standpoint, that the guys that are on it are still working their asses off. If they look good and they perform well, they're working their asses off. Right. I'm a 16-year-old kid. I go through a full year, right? I'm reading bodybuilding magazines, so forth, and I'm starting to now speak to people in the gym, right? And as a young man, what you're doing is you're looking at people.
Really quick, what was your first exposure to it, like the gym environment? Was it like through school? Was it a local gym? Was it old school iron? Like, tell us a little bit about like your first gym.
So we stayed in a small town. So that town, we pretty much had one gym, right? It was an old school iron gym. Right, it's pretty much where everyone trains. It was at that time. I was at a rugby stadium, and that's the only gym we had in town at that time. Nice. Now, when you go in there, obviously there's guys that are jacked, and there's guys not. So you start fluctuating to the guys that you want to embody. You want to look like them.
Makes sense.
And I started making friends with them. You know,
these are older guys.
All older guys, right? And I started making friends with them, started interacting with them, training with them. They help me as much as they can. And once you build up a little trust, and especially back in the 90s, there's no YouTube or internet or people openly, honestly speaking about these things. So the only way to gain the knowledge is to speak to someone who has gone through the experience. So you speak to these guys and you find out that the protein shakes, all the other things that you could take, which at that time were very limited, right? It's the 90s. And you figure out and you go, well, okay, so there's these things they take, these hormones, right? And I'm a 16-year-old, trained for a year, right? Now, to give context, I'm 6 foot tall, right? I was 6 foot tall when I started training, and I weighed under 100 pounds. Wow. Now imagine that.
Skinny.
I was skinny. I got a picture. I'll pop them up.
At 16.
At 16.
6 foot, 100 pounds.
Right. I just got height, and as a kid, I would eat a lot. I just couldn't gain weight.
Yeah, that's my
right.
problem
So
too.
again, I was embodying and going, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jean-Claude Van Damme, all the big boys, and Dolph Lundgren, whoever was that heroes at the time. I want to look like them.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Those are the physiques I want to embody.
Yep.
So you go through this as a young man, and you find these people in the gym, and they explain to you that there's this magical pills and magical injections you can take, right? Which sounds very much like what Captain America did. And you know what? They're going to give you muscles. Right. So
But did they ever say the word steroids to you?
They eventually do. So this is, again, because it's such a taboo subject, and back then, again, you got to understand the legalities, which we're going to go into. You can walk into Thailand, you can walk into a pharmacy, and you can order a bucket full of steroids. It's legal. It's not illegal. There's a reason it's illegal in the United States.
Why though?
We'll get to that later. Let's start here. I've got a